To ensure that military gets paid. I'm sure you can tell by my voice I'm very shaky. Just want you to hear a little bit about my family. I have 2 medically fragile children. I have a husband who actively serves his country. He suffers from PTSD from his 2 tours in Afghanistan.
Lo de hoy dejó al gran negociador con la cara en el piso. El gobierno sigue cerrado, la gente está pagando el precio y el presidente Trump ni negocia ni quiere negociar. El humo ya no tapa el incendio, hasta su propia base le está diciendo en la cara que esto es un desastre. Y el que se tragó ese trago amargo en vivo fue Mike Johnson. Un votante de Trump lo encaró y el hombre se desmoronó frente a cámara. Además, hasta Marjorie Taylor Greene salió a marcarle la cancha a su propio partido. Vamos con la noticia.
Washington Post poll. It shows that 47% of Americans believe that President Trump and the Republicans are mainly responsible for the shutdown. You see it here on the screen, compared to just 30% of Americans who blame Democrats. Of course, Republicans are the ones with the power. Do you agree with Americans in that poll that see the shutdown as your party's fault?
You know what? I don't think the shutdown is popular for either side. And so I see the shutdown completely different from maybe my party leadership. And I'm not putting the blame on the president. I'm actually putting the blame on the speaker and Leader Thune in the Senate. This should not be happening. And I don't think, look, as a member of Congress, we already have a low enough job approval rating. This shutdown is just going to drive everybody's approval rating that much lower.
Yes. But so you're putting the blame on the leadership of your party.
Absolutely. We control the House. We control the Senate. We have the White House. I've been vocal saying, you can use the nuclear option in the Senate. This doesn't have to be a shutdown. But what we have to do is we have to work for the American people. And our country is so divided right now. We see it all the time in every single way. It's divided in what I would say very dangerous ways. And we saw that with the recent assassination of Charlie Kirk, which has upset so many people across the board. And look, when it comes to hearing from senior citizens or my own friends and neighbors and my own family members and people that voted for me, and they're just saying, Marjorie, we just really want somebody to do something about health insurance premiums. We really want our government and our leaders to actually focus on our country for a change and fix our problems. That is the message I constantly hear from my district, and I'm a representative. I don't have to be a cheerleader for my party. I have to represent my district because those are the people that hired me and sent me here. And I agree with them, and I'm pretty much over it's just drama constantly on TV. No offense, because you guys are on television, but that's all that we see in American politics now.
Marjorie no se volvió progresista de la noche a la mañana, pero olió el costo político y tiró a su propia cúpula debajo del bus. La marca del shutdown de Trump está prendida y quema. Ojo, no le regalemos medalla. Lo que dice hoy se viene advirtiendo hace semanas. El cierre sube primas, amenaza servicios y es una decisión política, no un accidente. Lo que viene ahora lo dejó aún más claro. Cuando la realidad golpea ya no alcanza el guión. Vean a Mike Johnson cuando un votante de Trump le cuenta con la voz temblando lo que significa para su familia que no paguen al ejército.
Mr. Johnson, so my question or comments are related to what you said yesterday about not being open to pass any legislation to ensure that military gets paid. I'm sure you can tell by my voice I'm very shaky. Just want you to hear a little bit about my family. I have 2 medically fragile children. I have a husband who actively serves his country. He suffers from PTSD from his 2 tours in Afghanistan. If we see a lapse in pay come the 15th, my children do not get to get the medication that's needed for them to live their life. Because we live paycheck to paycheck. I heard you earlier say that you side with President Trump on anything that he says. Well, I just read an article this morning that said he absolutely wholeheartedly believes that there needs to be legislation put in so that we do not miss a paycheck. You have the power to do that. And as a Republican, I'm very disappointed in my party, and I'm very disappointed in you because you do have the power to call the House back. You did that, or you refused to do that just for a show. I am begging you to pass this legislation. My kids could die. We don't have the credit because of the medical bills that I have to pay regularly. You could stop this, and you could be the one that could say military is getting paid. And I think that it is awful. And the audacity of someone who makes six figures a year to do this to military families is insane.
All right, Samantha.
Eso no fue un ataque de la izquierda, fue la base diciendo basta. Datos, vida cotidiana, cero eslóganes. Johnson intentó aguantar el gesto, pero por dentro estaba frito. Y aquí es donde los demócratas deben insistir. Pagar a las tropas y a los trabajadores esenciales es decisión política que puede votarse ya. Otro ciudadano le recuerda al speaker que la militarización de ciudades no deja a nadie sonriendo y le hace una pregunta sencilla sobre salud. ¿Apoyaría extender por un año los subsidios del ACA y dejar de usar a los migrantes como excusa?
Hi. I just want to start by saying, hearing you say that everyone is smiling in the cities where troops, our National Guard, has been rolled into, feels dystopian and insane to hear you say that, watching the response to this. But that's not actually my question. My question, I just needed to say that while hearing you talk about this. My question is, if Republicans and Democrats can agree to a one-year extension to the ACA subsidies, removing this sort of talking point of illegal immigrants draining our resources as you sit here and lie about this, would you support that bill and bring it to a vote on the House floor? This is a big question that I have for you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Si es rodeo, es no con corbata. Y atención, cuando el debate se centra en primas, cobertura y hospitales, la cuentita mágica de culpar a terceros no pasa la prueba del recibo. Y para rematar, otra llamada que expone el problema central: obediencia a una sola persona. Escuchen cómo le preguntan a Johnson si alguna vez votó contra una línea marcada por Trump y sobre el 218avo voto que esperaban para forzar una votación.
Recordatorio rápido: si les gusta este tipo de videos, nos ayudaría muchísimo que le dieran el botón de me gusta, se suscribieran si aún no lo han hecho y comenten su opinión, ya que el 98% de quienes nos ven todavía no están suscritos y juntos podemos hacer crecer a esta comunidad. Ahora sí, pasemos con la noticia.
Just wanted to ask the speaker a couple of questions. Have you ever voted against anything that Trump set forth as far as policy? That's one question. The other is, what is going on with the swearing in of the congresswoman who will make the 218 vote? I noticed that you were speaking in the hall yesterday with someone regarding the idea that, you know, maybe she would make the 218th vote.
Un Congreso que debería responder al país, no a un posteo de madrugada. Y mientras tanto, los problemas reales, pago, salud, seguridad, quedan de rehenes. Para cerrar el recorrido, veamos cómo Hakeem Jeffrey llama las cosas por su nombre y pone sobre la mesa el voto 218avo para obligar una votación.
And Mike Johnson and this group continue to cover up for the pedophiles. That's crazy. And as you pointed out, Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva was going to be a great member, succeeding, you know, her legendary dad in the Congress, a progressive champion. She's made clear, I'm going to be the 218th vote on the discharge petition to force an up or down vote, which will pass that.
Usar las reglas para romper el bloqueo, llevarlo al tablero y votar sin gritos, con mayorías. Lección del día: el shutdown ya no es un arma de presión, es un boomerang. Cuando MTG culpa al liderazgo, una votante de Trump suplica por el pago militar y Johnson no puede responder sí a extender los subsidios del ACA. Quedó claro quién creó el problema y quién quiere solucionarlo. Toca insistir en 3 puntos simples: pagos a tropas esenciales ya, extensión de subsidios para frenar el sablazo de las primas y fin de la obediencia a un solo hombre. La política adulta es negociar para la gente, no para el ego
Caroline
de...
Leavitt no es solo mala en su trabajo, es una caricatura del concepto mismo de la verdad. Y eso tiene una explicación simple: ella está en pánico. Totalmente. Cada vez que mira hacia donde esté su jefe, ve una nueva derrota. El colapso de su propio gobierno por un cierre administrativo que él mismo provocó. Una economía tambaleante por decisiones suyas. Y claro, los archivos Epstein que siguen persiguiéndolo como una sombra. Leavitt no puede ocultarlo, no puede maquillarlo y mucho menos enfrentarlo. Así que hace lo único que sabe hacer: huir. Y es exactamente lo que hizo hoy. Quedó acorralada por sus propias mentiras. Una de ellas sobre Epstein y otra sobre los despidos masivos que se vienen en el gobierno. Pero antes de entrar en esta joya de la manipulación, un recordatorio rápido. Si les gusta este tipo de videos, nos ayudaría mucho que le dieran al botón de me gusta. Suscríbanse si aún no lo han hecho y comenten su opinión. El 98% de quienes nos ven todavía no están suscritos y juntos podemos hacer crecer a esta comunidad. Ahora sí, pasemos a noticia.
Caroline, I have 2 questions. On the layoff of federal workers, potentially, the president said yesterday that Democrats will be to blame if federal workers lose their jobs. Historically, though, in past shutdowns, workers have been furloughed, but they have not been laid off en masse. So wouldn't that be the president's call to lay people off?
As I've said repeatedly, Caitlin, this conversation about layoffs would not be happening right now if the Democrats
did not vote to shut the government down. And as I also said last briefing as well, we are $37 trillion in debt. And the government is not receiving any cash. So someone has to look at the balance sheet and be...
Es impresionante. Donald Trump lleva semanas publicando imágenes y videos generados con inteligencia artificial donde se autoproclama el segador de empleos. Literalmente celebra la idea de despedir trabajadores federales como si fuera una victoria moral. Y aún así, su vocera nos pide creer que los responsables son los demócratas. Esto no es improvisado. Esto es Proyecto 2025 en acción. El plan que ya advertimos aquí hace meses. Despedir a miles de empleados públicos y reemplazarlos con fanáticos leales al movimiento MAGA. El propio autor del proyecto lo dijo. Queremos traumatizar al funcionariado público. Esa es la estrategia. Así que no vengan a hablar de decisiones difíciles o equilibrar el presupuesto. Esto es una purga ideológica. Y por si fuera poco, Leavitt decidió continuar mintiendo, esta vez sobre el caos en Portland.
Sorry, my second question. A federal judge over the weekend that the president had appointed to the bench in his first term in office basically argued that he could not deploy other states' National Guards to Portland. Basically said that it was untethered, his argument, to what is actually happening on the ground. Which local officials in Portland have said that the National Guard is needed there?
With all due respect to that judge, I think her opinion is untethered in reality and in the law. The president is using his authority as Commander-in-Chief, U.S. Code 12406, which clearly states that the president has the right to call up the National Guard in cases where he deems it's...
La ironía es que hace apenas unos días la casa de una jueza fue incendiada después de ser un blanco constante de los ataques de Trump, quien la acusó de ser la enemiga del pueblo. ¿Y qué hace la vocera del presidente al día siguiente? Seguir el mismo libreto, repetir la misma deshumanización que ya está teniendo consecuencias reales. Y todavía tienen la osadía de decir que son los demócratas quienes alientan el odio. No, lo que alientan es el cinismo, el desprecio por la ley y una peligrosa sensación de impunidad. Pero eso no es todo, porque mientras el país se pregunta qué está pasando, Leavitt también mintió sobre Portland.
That have said we need the National Guard. Because I spoke to the police chief of Portland last week. He said that the president's claims just don't match up with what's happening on the ground.
I would encourage you as a reporter to go on the ground and to take a look at it for yourself, because there's been many members of the press, not press in this room, but independent journalists, some of whom we'll be inviting to the White House very soon to share their stories, because they have been in the middle of these riots and they have witnessed the anarchy that is taking place night after night. It's on video. You should play it on your show. You have a great opportunity on prime time on CNN to show your audience. Yeah, but you're probably talking to partisan Democrat officials who are opposed to everything this president does. You should also ask the people who live in Portland. We've actually heard from many members of the community who have said that this is complete civil disobedience. It's a mess. It's been loud. It's been troubling for neighbors in the community who are just trying to live peacefully. And these people are not there to peacefully protest. They are there to cause mayhem and havoc.
¿Caos? Los únicos videos que circulan sobre Portland muestran a familias en mercados, campesinos y estudiantes en bicicleta. Pero para Leavitt, todo eso es anarquía. El problema no es solo la mentira, sino cómo lo justifica. Una fuerza policial paralela bajo control directo de Trump, reclutando a extremistas con historial violento para perseguir a opositores políticos y minorías. Ese es el verdadero proyecto. Un estado policial disfrazado de orden público. Y cuando la prensa intentó pedirle explicaciones sobre todo esto, Leavitt hizo lo que siempre hace: salir corriendo.
Again, we shouldn't be having to do that. The Democrats have a chance to change course tonight. I believe the vote's taking place at 6:30, and we urge Democrat senators to vote to reopen the government and to do the right thing. Thanks, guys.
Huyó. Literalmente prefirió escapar que responder preguntas sobre el cierre. Porque ¿cómo podría justificar lo que han hecho? Este gobierno cerró la administración federal por una sola razón: recortar la asistencia médica. Los demócratas solo pedían algo básico: evitar los recortes brutales a Medicaid y mantener los créditos fiscales del Obamacare para que 20 millones de personas no perdieran su cobertura. ¿Y qué hicieron los republicanos? Ellos se negaron. Exigieron al mayor corte a Medicaid en la historia para financiar una vez más recortes de impuestos a los millonarios. Y mientras millones de estadounidenses pierden su sustento, ¿dónde están los responsables? Mike Johnson cancelando sesiones, Trump en un camino de golf, y cuando le preguntan si al menos está llamando a los demócratas para negociar, su portavoz responde con orgullo: no ha llamado a nadie.
People
illegal to call their Democratic senators. Is the president calling Democratic senators himself? Can you say what he's doing today to resolve the shutdown?
Yep, I was just in the Oval Office. He was on the phone with Speaker Johnson. He's also spoken with the Senate Majority Leader, who are in touch with, of course, moderate Democrats and Democrats across the board, who we understand hopefully want to do the right thing by their constituents to reopen the government. So the president is being kept very well apprised of the ongoing shutdown on Capitol Hill. And of course, his position is very clear. There's nothing to negotiate, just reopen the government, and then we can talk about all the important issues facing our country.
So he hasn't called specific members of Congress?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Ahí lo tienen, un presidente que se autoproclama el mejor negociador del mundo. Es incapaz de sostener una llamada para abrir el gobierno que él mismo cerró. Pero no se equivoquen, esto no es torpeza, es estrategia. Trump y su círculo quieren el caos, lo necesitan, porque en el desorden es donde prosperan las mentiras y el autoritarismo.
I was going to you in the blue shirt and tie.
Oh, thank you,
yes,
Caroline.
you're
John
welcome.
With the Daily Mail. Today, the Supreme Court declined to hear Ghislaine Maxwell's appeal. Will Trump rule out granting her clemency? Is that something the White House is considering?
It's not something I've heard discussed, and we don't comment on clemency requests that may or may not have been made, but I'm certainly not tracking that one at this point in time.
Lo que vimos hoy con Caroline Leavitt no es solo incompetencia, es el síntoma de un régimen que se desmorona, un gobierno que no sabe gobernar, que huye del escrutinio, que necesita enemigos para ocultar su propio fracaso. Y mientras ellos culpan a todos los demás, la realidad se impone. El país está paralizado por decisiones políticas que solo benefician a unos cuantos. Por eso, Leavitt huye de las cámaras. No está escapando de los periodistas, está escapando de la verdad y la realidad.
Stephen Miller es sin competencia el operador más siniestro del gobierno del presidente Donald Trump. No solo por sus decisiones, también por la forma en que intenta vender miedo con una voz chillona y argumentos de papel. Por eso, verlo derretirse al aire, quedarse mudo y quedar casado en mentiras es algo tentador para el espectador. Hoy vamos con una cadena de tropiezos en televisión que lo dejaron expuesto. Recordatorio rápido, si les gusta este tipo de videos, nos ayudaría muchísimo que le dieran el botón de me gusta, se suscribieran si aún no lo han hecho y comenten su opinión, ya que el 98% de quienes nos ven todavía no están suscritos y juntos podemos hacer crecer a esta comunidad. Ahora sí, pasemos con la noticia.
Any idea how much of ICE's workforce and resources have had to be reprioritized? How much of the Joint Terrorism Task Force's resources have had to be reprioritized to fight these domestic terrorists? Do you have any idea how many resources are spent
you keep
trying
calling
to
them
hunt down and
terrorists, but
track
isn't that hyperbolic to call them terrorists?
What is? If anything, I'm understating the severity of the situation. What issue was more central in 2024 than turning back the border invasion? And since the day we came in, ICE officers have been subjected to a nonstop campaign of physical violence and harassment every single day. And outside the Portland field office in particular, every night, they come, they assemble, they fight, they try to impede movement, they physically attack. For what purpose? Because we had an election, Boris, we had one. What's the purpose? To use actual physical violence to change the result of the election, to say you cannot turn back the border invasion. Do you have any idea how many resources we have had to...
Y aquí viene el manual de Miller. ¿Cómo? Se estarán preguntando. Bueno, pues sería inflar el peligro para justificar poderes excepcionales. Mezcla migración, protestas y terrorismo para saltarse el debate legal y presupuestario. Cuando le piden precisión, se queda en consignas. Si de verdad hubiera un escenario tipo ISIS, traería datos, no dramatizaciones. Y justo cuando necesitaba sostener el cuento, llega su primer colapso. Ni el micrófono lo aguantó.
You've called the district judge's ruling blocking the deployment of National Guard in Oregon legal insurrection. Does the administration still plan to abide by that ruling?
Well, the administration filed an appeal this morning with the Ninth Circuit. I would note the administration won an identical case in the Ninth Circuit just a few months ago with respect to the federalizing of the California National Guard. Under Title 10 of the U.S. Code, the president has plenary authority.
Stephen? Stephen? Hey, Stephen, can you hear me?
Sí, es un fallo técnico, obviamente eso lo sabemos, pero simbólico. Cuando toca explicar límites constitucionales, su discurso se apaga. Además, adornar su autoridad plenaria no reemplaza el hecho de que necesitas base legal y proporcionalidad para militarizar. Vuelve al aire con más gasolina y ahora pinta asambleas frente a edificios federales como manual de terrorismo y pide tropas.
Objective is to make it impossible for ICE to carry out ICE enforcement. When in our history have we tolerated unlawful riotous assemblies night after night around FBI buildings or ATF buildings or DEA buildings? This is the textbook definition of domestic terrorism, using the actual and imminent threat of violence to keep federal officials from doing their jobs. And unless we send in troops and resources, then we will continue to bleed federal law enforcement resources in these street battles. It's absurd, it's unconstitutional, and must be put down.
Aquí tengo una pregunta para Stephen Miller. ¿De casualidad el 6 de enero te suena? Golpearon policías, asaltaron edificios federal y trataron de interrumpir la transición de poder. Si su vara es impedir que funcionarios trabajen, el ejemplo más grave lo firmó su propio bando. El problema aquí no son derechos, es licencia para reprimir. El periodista paciente le pide una respuesta de sí o no sobre si están provocando el caos. Miller intenta descalificar la pregunta, se enreda con escenarios absurdos y termina contradiciéndose. Vamos con el choque final.
That's not exactly a no, Stephen. Can you just unequivocally state that the immigration policy?
It's a dumb question. Okay.
Well, I appreciate
no,
that, but
and it's a dumb question.
So no, this policy is not designed.
I thought when I said it was a dumb question, it meant no.
Well, I just want to be clear and precise. I appreciate you trying to qualify my questions, but nevertheless, I think it's a fair one that a lot of people have.
My full answer is no, that is a lie, and it's a dumb question. But you said something else baked into the premise of one of your questions. You said, well, aren't we provoking? Illinois governor says we're provoking actions that are unlawful. Why would the mere presence, just think about this for a second, if I put federal law enforcement and National Guard into a nice sleepy southern town, is anyone going to riot? Is anyone going to try to shoot them in the face?
Well,
Are they going
if someone
try to
goes
attack them in
into
the
a
street?
building
They would say,
full
this
of
is,
people in the middle of the night covering their faces without identification, without identifying themselves, there might be concern among the community, especially if American citizens are being, especially if American citizens are caught up in that, which some reportedly
we netted over 30 foreign terrorists who are members of Train
and American citizens also wound up apprehended in
that. They torture women and children. Those American citizens are now safe from Tren de Aragua.
Cuando le exigen precisión, se deshace. Su lógica es peligrosa. Si despliegas fuerzas sin reglas claras, provocas choques. Si encima llamas terrorismo a la disidencia, abres la puerta a abusos. Y ojo al doble estándar. Gritan contra burócratas no electos. Mientras un burócrata no electo, Miller empuja la militarización, censura y propaganda desde la sombra. Para romper este hechizo de no se puede hacer nada, cerramos con quien lo explica sin rodeos. AOC y la trampa de la inevitabilidad.
There absolutely is an unprecedented abuse of power, destruction of norms, erosion of our government and our democracy in order to prop up an authoritarian style of governance. That is happening. However, they are weaker than they look. And it is important that we remember that, because what they rely on is the impression of power, the perception of inevitability, in us giving up in advance to say, oh, what's going to happen if I stand up, etc. Nothing's going to happen. They rely on that perception of inevitability and power so that people comply in advance and acquiesce in advance and give up in advance. And at the end of the day, Donald Trump is at record levels of unpopularity in his tenure.
Lo de hoy dejó el patrón nítido. Exagerar la amenaza, pedir poderes extraordinarios y descalificar la pregunta incómoda. Cuando le pidieron ley y datos, Miller colapsó y hasta se quedó sin audio. La respuesta de democrática no es bajar la voz, es exigir pruebas, proteger el derecho a protestar y negarse a convertir la vida civil en zona militar. Su autoridad se sostiene en el mito de que no hay alternativa. No comprar miedo, no aceptar trampas y poner reglas por escrito. Aquí seguiremos nombrándolo clip porque
la crueldad nunca es un error para el movimiento MAGA, es el objetivo. Esa es la esencia de su política, el desprecio convertido en un espectáculo. Y cuando uno entiende eso, todo encaja. ¿O de verdad creen que Kristi Noem se disfraza con esos trajes porque le importa su seguridad? No, todo es un show, es parte del teatro que encubre el propósito. humillar, provocar y alimentar el odio. Mientras las ciudades con gobiernos republicanos viven picos históricos de violencia, el presidente Donald Trump y sus cómplices despliegan fuerzas federales en zonas demócratas solo para sembrar el miedo y venganza política. Para ellos, enviar agentes del ICE a recuperar el orden no es política de seguridad, es un juego. Es un chiste, y no hay nada más cruel que convertir el sufrimiento humano en entretenimiento político. Un recordatorio rápido: si les está gustando este tipo de videos, nos ayudaría mucho que le dieran al botón de me gusta, suscríbanse si aún no lo han hecho y comenten su opinión. El 98% de quienes nos ven todavía no están suscritos y juntos podemos hacer crecer a esta comunidad. Ahora sí, pasemos con la noticia.
I understand the sentiments on the ground from some of the advocates, but I want to say this: peaceful protesters are welcome. Federal agents who abuse their position to terrorize Illinoisans and incite violence are not welcome. They aren't receiving any orders from Trump to cease and desist their aggressive behavior. Remember, they answer only to Trump, not to the people of Illinois. In case there's any doubt about that, Noam, Bovino, and their agents have been escalating the situation outside the ICE facility and inhibiting the Broadview police from doing their jobs. At one point, state police asked CBP leaders for time to move the crowd to avoid any unnecessary confrontations. Rather than give state police time to protect the protesters and the ICE agents, Kristi Noem chose to drive her motorcade through the protesters to create clashes. Shortly after, Bovino came out to threaten mass arrests. These stories are only scratch.
Lo que acabamos de ver es la definición misma de represión política. Un gobernador explicando que el gobierno federal no solo se niega a detener la violencia, sino que la fomenta. Kristi Noem no buscaba proteger a nadie, buscaba un enfrentamiento. Esa es la lógica del trumpismo, fabricar caos para luego venderse como la solución. Y lo más perverso de todo es que mientras la gente en las calles intenta protestar pacíficamente, Trump y sus alfiles mandan a su maquinaria represiva a dar una lección. Pero la historia no termina ahí. Mientras esto ocurría, Jesse Waters decidió reírse públicamente del miedo de quienes viven bajo ese acoso.
Because, Jessica, when people say, oh, there's this guy and these ICE people are so crazy, I get mad because it's a lie. But then when she says these ICE people are abducting and kidnapping innocent hairdressers and sending them to dungeons to be tortured, I think, well, that's scaring a lot of illegals to go home themselves. So the next time Jessica brings up all these scare stories about all of these illegals getting rounded up indiscriminately, innocent people being sent overseas, I'm just going to say I agree. Because 2 million illegals have seen these scare tactics that Jessica likes to talk about, and they have left by themselves. And that is actually working on Donald Trump's immigration policy's behalf.
Eso que acabamos de escuchar no es un comentario polémico, es la apología del terror. Waters literalmente celebra que las comunidades migrantes vivan con miedo. Su argumento es tan cínico que asusta. Si la gente se va del país por miedo, entonces está funcionando. Esa es la política del actual presidente, el miedo como herramienta de control. Pero la ironía aquí es que justo después de esa burla, el propio Jesse Waters tuvo que tragarse su soberbia, porque lo descubrieron mintiendo.
Last Tuesday, I spoke about the criminal history of Alexander Dickey, who had been charged with the murder of Logan Federico in South Carolina. I made an error when I stated that former Judge Bentley Price had treated Dickey as a first-time burglary offender and gave him no prison time. Judge Price was not the judge who presided over Dickey's 2023 sentencing. Dickey pleaded guilty in that case to third-degree burglary, a first-time offense, and served just 411 days in prison. A local news outlet, WIS-10, reported that the rap sheet prosecutors used to make the charging decisions in that case did not have Dickey's complete criminal history. We also reached out to 11th Circuit Solicitor Rick Hubbard, but did not receive a response.
Y ahí lo tienen, el adalid de la verdad pidiendo disculpas en horario estelar porque mintió deliberadamente. Curioso, ¿no? No se ven retractaciones de Rachel Maddow ni Chris Hayes, tal vez porque ellos no se dedican a manipular a su audiencia con odio. Waters sí, él es la versión sonriente del trumpismo, un tipo que convierte la crueldad en un producto televisivo. Pero lo que hace no es periodismo, es propaganda. Y detrás de esa sonrisa hay una persona que vive de mentir, dividir y encubrir a los mismos poderosos que dice denunciar. Aquí tenemos la esencia del mensaje. El crimen solo importa cuando pueden usarlo para atacar a los que no se parecen a ellos. Por lo que el ICE está haciendo hoy no es seguridad fronteriza, es violencia política del Estado. Y lo más alarmante es que dentro de esa agencia ya se están reclutando exmiembros de grupos extremistas como los Proud Boys y los Oath Keepers, gente que cambió sus banderas neonazis por uniformes oficiales. Y mientras tanto, Waters y compañía los celebran desde sus estudios, maquillados, pagados por millonarios que financian la desinformación. Hablan de élites liberales, pero sirven a las élites más ricas y corruptas del país. Y todo mientras defienden a su amigo, el presidente Trump, el mismo que protegió a una de las personas más problemáticas y más poderosas de la historia reciente. Charlie Kirk, J.D. Vance, Jesse Waters, todos hacen parte de lo mismo. Gente que no cree en lo que dice, pero lo repite por dinero y por poder. Y mientras el país se incendia, ellos apuntan el dedo hacia minorías, mujeres e inmigrantes. Su crimen, como siempre, es ser distintos. Waters no se equivoca, Waters miente, y lo hace con plena conciencia, porque su trabajo no es de informar, su trabajo es de corromper. El trumpismo no necesita tener razón, solo necesita que la gente tenga miedo. Por ello, utilizan figuras como Jesse Waters para vestir el odio con traje y sonrisa. Pero cada vez que se burlan del dolor ajeno, cada vez que justifican la represión, lo que demuestran no es poder, es desesperación. Y lo que no entienden es que el miedo puede callar a muchos, pero no a todos. Si
el cerebro del presidente Donald Trump ya no da para sostener ni sus propias coartadas. Y no lo digo yo. Hoy, frente a preguntas directas, se le cruzaron los cables entre lo que ordenó, lo que posteó y lo que ahora niega. El resultado, un colapso en cámara lenta desde la Casa Blanca. Vamos a hilar cada pieza para que quede claro qué está pasando y por qué importa. Recordatorio rápido, si les gusta este tipo de videos, nos ayudaría muchísimo que le dieran el botón de me gusta, se suscribieran si aún no lo han hecho y comenten su opinión, ya que el 98% de quienes nos ven todavía no están suscritos y juntos podemos hacer crecer a esta comunidad. Ahora sí, pasemos con la noticia.
Well, I had a great talk with the president of Brazil, who's a good man. I met him actually at the United Nations. I was going up to make a speech and I didn't have a teleprompter. I was walking up to my teleprompter. I said, you know, I don't have a teleprompter. But just before that, I met with President Lula and I found him to be very good. I mean, we had a very good talk for about, 2 minutes. And then I went up to make the speech, and I was surprised to see, how would you like that one, Doug? I've got every leader in the world sitting out there. My teleprompter isn't on. You know why, Daniel? Because it was a rigged deal. But fortunately, I made a better speech than I would have if I read it off a teleprompter, which is pretty easy to do. So it was quite a day. That was a big day, but we met and we liked each other, and yeah, we had a great conversation. Yeah, we'll start doing business.
And are you considering coming to...
Cuando la mente se le va al agravio de hace semanas ante cualquier pregunta actual, no es carisma, es desconexión. Por cierto, el teleprompter lo monta su propio equipo. Si falló, fue incompetencia interna, no conspiración global. Y esa incapacidad de focalizar se repite también cuando habla de salud y negociaciones. Promete acuerdos que nadie ha visto y evita decir con quién habla. A continuación, atención al intento de vender un diálogo sobre sanidad sin admitir que no hay nada sobre la mesa.
It's pretty close to that number, and the way you stop them is not to give away, not to announce that you're giving everybody free health care, free this and that, but what that does is it affects the American people, because the American people are unable to get good health care. Obamacare has been a wreck, as you know, and to do that, we have to keep it propped up and do the best you can with it. It's a mess. But a lot of things are going on in that. You know, we talk about Hamas, then we talk about negotiations that we have going on right now. We have a negotiation going on right now with the Democrats that could lead to very good things.
What kind of
and I'm talking about good things with regard to health care.
Are you speaking with Democratic leaders? What kind of negotiations?
Well, I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that. But we are speaking with the Democrats, and some very good things could happen with respect to healthcare.
Inventar conversaciones para parecer en control mientras alimenta el desgaste institucional. El objetivo político es sembrar desesperanza, que creas que el Estado está roto y que nada cambia. Así él siempre va a ganar. Pero cuando se le pregunta algo en concreto, sus presiones para perseguir a James Comey, el castillo se le cae en vivo. Vamos a ese choque con Caitlin Collins.
James Comey is being arraigned on Wednesday, obviously after his indictment. Are you worried that your own statements calling for his prosecution could help him actually in his defense of this case?
No, I think he's a crooked guy. He's a dirty cop. Comey, I think he's a dirty cop. He's recognized by many people to be a dirty cop and dishonest guy. So all I have to do is, I mean, I have nothing to do with the case. I just say,
But you called
good
on
luck.
Pam Bondi to prosecute him and oppose
No,
him.
no, I don't call anybody. You know what? I'm allowed to do that if I wanted to do that. But Comey's a crooked guy. He has been for years. And he got caught. Look, he lied. This is just a simple case. He totally lied. And then he confirmed the lie on, I guess, numerous occasions, or at least one occasion. He confirmed the lie. He said, that's what I said, and I stand by it. And, you know, I mean, the guy, and he didn't say, to the best of my knowledge. He didn't say, well, I don't remember. He made a very definitive statement and a very important statement concerning him. And he got caught in an outright lie. And that's why a group of people, it wasn't me that voted, they voted to indict him. But he's a crooked guy, in my opinion, and we'll find out. The court's going to determine that in a little while, I guess, yeah.
El vaivén es de manual. No lo hice y si lo hice, puedo. Negación, permiso y vuelta a la negación. No es solo incoherencia, es admisión de intención. Y si Comey patina con Ghislaine Maxwell, directamente tropieza en el abismo. Finge no recordar, promete hablar con el Departamento de Justicia y desliza nombres como si los indultos fueran favores de cortesía. Mira este momento.
The Supreme Court is back and they rejected today an appeal by Ghislaine Maxwell to overturn her conviction. That means her only chance of getting out of prison is a pardon from you. Is that something you're...
Who are we talking about?
Ghislaine Maxwell.
You know, I haven't heard the name in so long. I can say this, that I'd have to take a look at it. I would have to take a look. Did they reject that?
She wanted to appeal her conviction.
And what happened?
They said that they were not going to hear her appeal.
I see. Well, I'll take a look at it. I will speak to the DOJ. I wouldn't consider it or not consider it. I don't know anything about it. So, but I will speak to the DOJ.
Why would she be a candidate for clemency, sir?
I don't know. I mean, I'd have to speak to the DOJ. I'll look at it. I have a lot of people who have asked me for pardons. I call him Puff Daddy has asked me for a pardon.
But she was convicted of child sex trafficking.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to take a look at it. I'd have to ask DOJ. I didn't know they rejected it. I didn't know she was even asking for it, frankly.
Según él, no me acuerdo o lo veré con el Departamento de Justicia. Es esa típica muletilla para evitar costos y dejar la puerta abierta. Pero aquí no hay ambigüedad. Se trata de sex infantil. Que el presidente coquetee con la idea de revisar ya es una señal política. Y mientras tanto, para cambiar de tema, vuelve a su deporte favorito. Pintar ciudades demócratas como zonas de guerra. Vean cómo se va contra Chicago y el gobernador Pritzker.
It's probably worse than almost any city in the world. You can go to Afghanistan, you can go to a lot of different places, and they probably marvel at how much crime we have. Then you go to Memphis, where we are right now. Now,
Es la típica pose del tipo duro, gritar infierno urbano para justificar despliegues y tapar su propio desorden político, pero cuando contrastas con datos locales, el relato se desmorona. Por eso es clave escuchar a J.B. Pritzker responder con cifras y contexto en mano. Vamos con la noticia.
There was never an insurrection or an invasion on the ground that justified the deployment of the military to our American city. We stood out there on a beautiful day at River Point Park to make that point. Donald Trump's deranged depiction of Chicago as a hellhole, a war zone, and the worst and most dangerous city in the world was just complete BS. He clearly has decided to declare war on a great American city that has the lowest homicide rate in 60 years, in a state that has record employment and near record tourism. And he's done it for some unspoken reason.
Todo esto podemos ver un patrón completo, una queja eterna, falsa negociación, negación con puerta trasera y amnesia selectiva con Maxwell. Cuando se atasca, el presidente reubica el foco con el espantajo del caos urbano. La respuesta tiene que ser minuciosa, exigir hechos, rastro documental de órdenes políticas y límites institucionales nítidos. Y a la oposición que hablen alto sobre sus resultados en seguridad real, prevención, empleo, comunidad. No acepten el marco del miedo. El El poder se alimenta del silencio y la democracia de ponerle nombre.
Donald Trump volvió a pararse frente a las cámaras, y lo que siguió fue un espectáculo digno de un presidente completamente desbordado. Entre acusaciones delirantes, improvisaciones sobre Gaza y comentarios sobre premios Nobel, el actual presidente de Estados Unidos ofreció una de esas ruedas de prensa donde no se sabe si reír, alarmarse o las dos cosas al tiempo. Un recordatorio rápido: si les está gustando este tipo de videos, nos ayudaría mucho que le dieran al botón de me gusta, suscríbanse si aún no lo han hecho y comenten su opinión. El 98% de quienes nos ven todavía no están suscritos y juntos podemos hacer crecer esta comunidad. Ahora sí, pasemos con la noticia.
But you're really incredible patriots, incredible people. Go ahead, please, Brian. Brian, go ahead.
I am so thankful for each and every one of you here right now, and I'm very grateful that my network, Real America's Voice, has partnered up with many of you. Jack was so big, you have a show on a network. Many of you, Savannah, have appeared on a network as well, so thank you for being here. My question is this: in terms of following the money, I would just notify that the city of Austin is cleared to vote tomorrow to basically waive a $120,000 fee so that a No Kings, basically an anti-Trump rally, can occur in their city. They're bypassing the fees, rolling it to the taxpayers. So my question is to you: what can the people of Austin, Texas do right now to make sure that their tax dollars don't fund a No Kings anti-Trump rally coming up?
Well, you just tell me that I would love to do something about that. Bring a lawsuit, do something. You know, the best thing you can do is have honest elections, because the elections are totally rigged in so many of these places. You know, you take a look, the people, they're all loving you. They can't breathe. They love so much, every one of them. You don't see one negative, then all of a sudden you lose the election by 20 points. The elections are so rigged, and we proved that in 2020 more than any other time. But even the last election, there were areas that I won by much more. We won in a landslide, but I actually won in more of a landslide than we thought. I said, you got to get out, make it too big to rig. And fortunately, the people made it too big to rig. They tried. But the biggest thing you can do is have honest elections. You know, if you don't have, and you need great media. You need borders. You need borders. Wait. You need borders. You need honest media. You need honest elections, and you have a great country, and you need all three of them. Yeah, go ahead.
Lieutenant had ties to all these radical groups that you talked about inside here. So thank you for removing.
I would like you to make a big deal, though, if they're waiving a fee, but I guarantee they wouldn't waive it if it was. It's not Trump. If it were a conservative rally, they wouldn't be waiving it. So maybe you can look into that, Pam. Todd. That sounds like one for Todd, Pam. Go ahead, Todd. Good luck. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Who are you with?
I am with
What network?
I'm with Al Arabiya. It's an Arabic network based in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. But I am the foreign ruler today. Mr. President, you said that you might go to the Middle East on Sunday. Do you mean Egypt and Israel? And would you consider going to Gaza to see what things on the ground?
Yeah, I would. I might do that. I may do that. We haven't decided exactly. I'll be going to Egypt most likely. That's where everybody is gathered right now, and we appreciate that very much. But I'll be making the rounds, as the expression goes. I probably will. Go ahead.
Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Go ahead.
Just to clarify, you said you might go to Gaza. You're saying that's
Who
the
you
first
with?
topic. I'm representing the TV pool, but I'm with NBC, sir.
That's too bad.
Okay. Well, just to clarify, you said you might go to Gaza, and then the second question I had earlier today, you said the mayor of Chicago and the governor of Illinois should be jailed. Have you asked the Justice Department to look at possible charges?
No, I've seen the law, and when you have a group of people where the police call off the safety for ICE officials, I've understood that, and I've read it today in numerous journals, that that's illegal. What they did is I guess it was ICE, Christy, right? They were under threat, and the police were helping beautifully, and it was fine. And then all of a sudden, a woman was on the line saying, everybody, move back, get out. And they were given an order by the second person in the police department, and the governor knew about it, the mayor knew about it. I understand that's a criminal offense. Do you want to comment on that, Christy?
Yes, sir, we're seeing that kind of pattern happen with local law enforcement and state law enforcement, not just in Illinois, but also out in Oregon, too. In fact, in Portland, I was there yesterday, but some of the ICE officers were telling me that as they drove by the rioters that were saying, kill ICE agents, Molotov cocktails, melt ICE, that the Portland police were cheering them on and had their fists in the air cheering on the rioters that were threatening their lives. So in Chicago, we had a 10-car caravan trail our ICE officials and pin them down. And those ICE officials, to get out of their vehicles, a woman tried to ram them and run them over, and shots were fired to get them to safety. So it's happening on a regular basis, and any elected official that allows this to happen and gives cover to those kind of individuals who are perpetuating murder should absolutely be prosecuted, in my opinion.
Those two should be prosecuted.
Daniel.
Thank you.
And by the way, we have Marco Rubio. Marco, come on up here, please. He's going to bring a little stability to this group. Come on up. Does everybody know Marco Rubio? Is there anybody that doesn't? Some of the reporters don't. That's why they shouldn't be reporters.
Which job is he here for today,
Come
sir?
on up here, Marco. Anything we should know about the Middle East?
That's what we're hoping to talk to you about here, Mr. President.
He's doing a good job. He was born for this job, I can tell you. Daniel, please.
Mr. President, thank you very much. I have two questions for you, if that's okay. Seamus talked a little bit about the money aspect of this. Do you believe if you go after where the money is coming from with Antifa, in regards to Antifa, do you believe that would be similar to cutting the head off the snake, so to speak? And I have
It would help. I don't know that it would be totally complete, but it would certainly, you'd knock out 75%, 80%, 85%. These people, a lot of them don't believe it. You know, when I watch them, I say, I can almost tell a pro they're like professionals. That's all they do. And they get paid by somebody. I think it would knock out a lot of it. Yeah, not all of it maybe, but a lot of it.
And then a follow-up to that is a lot of the people who we've listened to over the last hour, they've emphasized that Antifa, it's not necessarily this big organized thing. It's a bit ambiguous. It's deorganized. I think that's one of the words that Andy used. What is the challenges of going after a group that makes it intentionally difficult to go after and find? That could be for you, the Attorney General, anyone up there.
Well, they're smart people, and they deceive. A lot of them are crooked people. A lot of them have been staying out of trouble their whole lives, and they've been bad from the day they were born, frankly. But these are sick people. Pam, go ahead, please.
Well, they're smart, but they're not smart enough. Oh, my microphone's broken. They're smart, but they're not smart enough. They have been covered by these liberal cities for so many years. And that's why we're all working with Treasury, with all these different departments, to find the criminal conspiracy.
Okay. I'm just giving. I was just given a note by the Secretary of State saying that we're very close to a deal in the Middle East, and they're going to need me pretty quickly. So I will take a couple of more questions. Please.
Thank you, sir. I also have two questions for you, if I may. Have you given any more thought to possibly suspending habeas corpus to not only deal with these insurrectionists across the nation, but also to continue rapidly deporting illegal aliens?
Yeah, it's suspending who?
Habeas corpus, sir.
Oh, I don't know. I'd rather leave that to Christie. What do you think?
No, sir, I haven't been a part of any discussions on that.
All right, go ahead.
In the ceasefire
This is CNN speaking, by the way. So,
are you personally
this is one
participating?
of the worst reporters that you'll ever see. I don't even want to take a question. It's a waste of time. Go ahead.
How will you decide which workers get back pay and which workers do not?
Well, we're going to see. Most of them are going to get back pay, and we're going to try and make sure of that. But some of them are being hurt very badly by the Democrats, and they therefore won't qualify. Go ahead, please.
What will the administration do to foreign Antifa organizers and funders who are located overseas?
Go ahead. In the yellow, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the Nobel Peace Prize will be announced on Friday. You've been nominated by many world leaders.
By many countries.
By
That's
many
right.
countries, as well as the hostage families. Do you think you will win?
I have no idea. I mean, look, I did settle. Marco would tell you we settled 7 wars. We're close to settling an 8th. And I think we'll end up settling the Russia situation, which is horrible. 7,000 people died last week, by the way, in Russia, between Russia and Ukraine. I think we'll settle that. So I don't think anybody in history has settled that many, but perhaps they'll find a reason not to give it to me, you know? Perhaps they will. Thank you.
Going to the shutdown quickly, what is your position on the extension of health care subsidies, which is what Democrats are asking for?
All I want to do is very simple. I want to get the country open, and then we're going to discuss that. And we'd like to Obama.
Lo que acabamos de ver no es una rueda de prensa, es un retrato clínico del estado político y mental de Donald Trump. Desorden, paranoia y autovictimización. Cada pregunta se convierte en una excusa para reafirmar su teoría de que todo, absolutamente todo está manipulado contra él. Las elecciones, los medios, las ciudades, la justicia e incluso los premios Nobel. Trump ya no gobierna, improvisa, reacciona y hasta se contradice. Pasa de hablar de Texas a Gaza, de Antifa al Nobel que le deben, como si todo formara parte de una conspiración universal en su contra. Y lo más preocupante no es su discurso, sino el silencio de los que lo rodean. Nadie lo corrige, nadie lo frena, porque el trumpismo se ha vuelto exactamente eso. Una corte de aduladores que aplaude el delirio. Este tipo de intervenciones no son simples exabruptos, son parte de una estrategia. Mantener viva la sensación de caos, de amenaza y de que él, solamente él, puede salvar al país del desastre que él mismo está provocando. Y lo hace mientras su gobierno se tambalea por el cierre administrativo, las tensiones internacionales y los juicios que lo rodean. El mensaje es claro. Si él pierde, es fraude. Si él gana, es voluntad del pueblo. No hay espacio para la autocrítica ni para la realidad. Lo que vimos en esta conferencia es más que una anécdota. Es la confirmación de que Trump no busca convencer, sino dividir. Cada palabra, cada exageración, cada acusación absurda está diseñada para reforzar la idea de un enemigo interno constante. Periodistas, demócratas, inmigrantes o incluso ciudades enteras. Pero detrás de ese ruido lo que se revela es debilidad. Un presidente que necesita inventar enemigos para no enfrentar sus propios fracasos.
Hay criminales, hay corruptos y está el presidente Donald Trump, que además es vergonzoso. Cada aparición suya es un bochorno internacional. Hoy se superó en el despacho Oval junto a Mark Carney, que lo frenó en seco cuando intentó colar una de sus mentiras favoritas. Trump perdió los papeles y aquí vamos a desmontarlo todo.
Recordatorio rápido, si les gusta este tipo de videos, nos ayudaría muchísimo que le dieran el botón de me gusta, se suscribieran si aún no lo han hecho y comenten su opinión, ya que el 98% de quienes nos ven todavía no están suscritos y juntos podemos hacer crecer a esta comunidad. Ahora sí, pasemos con la noticia.
Canadians are refusing to go to the U.S. The numbers are down like 23% in the first 7 months of the year. What do you say to Canadians that don't want to go to the U.S. now because of your 51st state talk, because of the trade war, the tariffs?
Yeah,
and
well,
fear
I understand that. Look, I understand that, and Americans don't want to buy cars that are made in Canada, you know? I mean, we have the same conflict. So there isn't, it's something that will get worked out. There's still great love between the two countries, but, you know, American people want product here. They want to make it here. Detroit was emptied out and moved to Canada, moved to Mexico, moved to other places, not just Canada. And now they're all moving back, you know, they're moving back. We have, right now, I was just telling Mark, we have 17 trillion, but it's really much higher. That was as of a couple of months ago. We have over $17 trillion being invested now in the United States.
Esta es la estrategia exterior de Trump, insultar al vecino para luego pedirle flujo de turistas e inversión. Lo de los autos canadienses es puro músculo para la cámara y lo de 17 trillones es la típica cifra lanzada sin explicar el origen, sectores o plazos. Política, cero plan. Con Canadá ya calentito, el presidente intenta demostrar un liderazgo global hablando de China. Escuchen el nivel de consistencia.
Sir, on China, what more can the United States and Canada do together to counter China?
Well, you have to be able to compete. They're a great competitor, and Mark and I both know that, and you have to be able to compete. We have big advantages over China for lots of different reasons, and I think we're doing very well with China. I get along very well with President Xi. I'm going to be meeting him in a few weeks, as you know. I'll be meeting him in South Korea, but we've had a very good relationship for a long time. But you have to be able to compete. To do well with China, if you can't compete, you're not going to do well with China. And Canada is very competitive. I can tell you that. Canada is a very competitive country. And I think Canada's done very well over the years with China.
Yeah, we have. But we'll do better together on that.
Palabras huecas como competir, llevarse bien, reunión en unas semanas, pero sin política industrial, sin reglas comerciales, sin coordinación aliada. Con los autoritarios, caricias, con los aliados, tarifazos. Esa incoherencia prepara el terreno para su ocurrencia más delirante del día, fusión Canadá-Estados Unidos. Y ahí entra Carney.
Azerbaijan, Armenia, disabling Iran as a force of terror. And now, and I'm running out of time, but this is many respects the most important.
The merger of Canada and the United States.
That wasn't where I was going.
Entonces, para entender a Donald Trump, o mejor dicho, para tratarlo, hay que no entrar en su delirio, no legitimar su marco, sí poner límites claros, así como hizo Carney. Carney lo paró en seco. Canadá no está en venta ni para show, ni de prensa, ni para titular fácil. Herido el ego, Trump busca refugio en su zona de confort, atacar personas trans con falsedades apocalípticas.
We have no men and women's sports. I mean, basic things. We're not going to take your child away and change the sex of your child. We're not going to do things like that. What they're doing to the country is so incredible, and they got away with it with all their woke crap, and now it's stopped.
Ya esto es un clásico desvío cuando no hay economía ni diplomacia para mostrar, fabrican pánico moral, no hay política pública seria, hay caricaturas para encender la base y tapar el papelón previo. Enseguida sube el tono con xenofobia y se burla de los demócratas, compara a Somalia y hace el guiño de siempre contra un congresista que todos saben quién es.
I'm getting calls from Democrats wanting to meet. I never even heard their names before, and they're claiming to be leaders. The Democrats have no leader. They remind me of Somalia, okay? You know? And I met the president of Somalia. I told him about the problem he's got. I said, you have somebody from Somalia who's telling us how to run our country. She's from Somalia. He said, would you like to take her back? He said, no, I don't want her. Okay, you know who I'm talking about?
Esto no es fortaleza, es debilidad envuelta en bravata. Busca risas fáciles y aplausos de cabina para tapar que su agenda se cae. Pero mientras el show sigue, en tribunales la realidad es otra. Pierden. Y cuando fuerzan la ley para militarizar ciudades, los jueces les paran el carro. Aquí la disección que hizo Rachel Maddow del tirón de orejas judicial.
That same judge in an emergency hearing late last night told the Trump administration in no uncertain terms that they were obviously trying to defy her order and they were not allowed to do that. And I say no uncertain terms. Now I will show you what I mean. The judge, Mr. Hamilton, let me ask you, how could bringing in federalized National Guard in California not be in direct contravention of the restraining order I issued yesterday? Trump administration lawyer, Mr. Hamilton. The restraining order issued yesterday, paragraph 1 of it, enjoined implementation of Secretary Hegseth's order to the Oregon National Guard. And this is the judge. Mr. Hamilton, you are an officer of the court. Aren't defendants simply circumventing my order, which relies on the conditions in Portland? Nothing has changed. There's nothing in my order that has changed. Trump administration lawyer. No, Your Honor. The judge. So why is this appropriate? Trump administration lawyer. Well, the reason is that the California National Guard were federalized under a different presidential memorandum. The judge, Mr. Hamilton, you are missing the point, because here it's the conditions on the ground in Oregon that were the basis for my finding that there was not a legal basis to bring federalized National Guard into Oregon. Is there any legal authority for federalizing National Guard for one purpose, that is to help California, and then to divert them to another purpose in a different state, where there's no showing that that is military help that is necessary to assist law enforcement or to protect law enforcement or the one federal building here for ICE? Trump administration lawyer. Well, the judge, is there any legal authority for what you are doing? Trump administration lawyer. Well, this section of the U.S. Code, section 12406, has not been utilized any time in history. So there are not many previous precedents from the use of this authority. But the judge, tell me, why do you think it has not been utilized? Trump administration lawyer, I can't speak to that. The judge, Mr. Hamilton. So again, if it were the case that you could federalize National Guard in one place and simply send them to a place where the president doesn't have authority to federalize the National Guard, then what would the purpose of this section of the U.S. Code be? You have to have a colorable claim that Oregon conditions require it, but you don't. We have already gone over that. So why is this appropriate? Trump administration lawyer. Well, again, no additional California guardsmen were federalized. They were instead relocated from California to the state of Oregon. And the judge. So are they federalized or are they not? Trump administration lawyer. They are federalized, but new guardsmen were not federalized. 200 already federalized California guardsmen were relocated to the state of Oregon. The judge. Let me ask you, Mr. Hamilton. You're an officer of the court. Do you believe that this is an appropriate way to deal with my order or an order that a judge issues that you disagree with? Or is the appropriate mechanism to appeal? Trump administration lawyer. Well, I'm not a policymaker, but the judge. You're a lawyer. That's how it's going for the Trump administration in court in trying to send in the troops to Oregon. We'll see how it goes in Illinois, right? I mean, Trump does not seem to have the law on his side on this matter. He does not seem to have the people on his side. He does not seem to have the politics on his side. And so what he has is just force.
Una traducción del juez al lenguaje llano es: no puedes usar un atajo administrativo para meter militares donde ya te dijeron que no procede. Si lo haces, burlas la orden y quedas expuesto. El resultado sin ley, sin votos y sin respaldo social. Por eso Trump grita sobre Canadá, fusiones y guerra culturales, para que no miremos la derrota donde cuenta. El día dejó una foto nítida. En el despacho oval, Carney pone límites. En televisión, Trump rellena con humo sobre China. Cuando se atasca, arroja carnadas, como por ejemplo las personas trans o la xenofobia. Y en los tribunales, un juez le recuerda que la ley no es un juguete. La respuesta democrática no es entrar al circo, es fijar hechos, cooperación real con aliados, rechazo a fábulas de fusiones y cero militarización fuera de la ley. El trumpismo vive de la humillación del otro.
Lo de hoy con Donald Trump fue una demostración en vivo y en directo de que su deterioro mental ya no se puede esconder. No importa cuánto se esfuerce la prensa tradicional en mirar hacia otro lado o suavizar sus tropiezos. Cada aparición pública del presidente de Estados Unidos deja en evidencia algo que muchos temen decir en voz alta. Trump no está al mando de su propio gobierno. Hoy lo vimos otra vez. Literalmente tuvo que ser rescatado por sus asesores. Y lo que dijeron, de paso, terminó exponiendo de un posible delito. Antes de comenzar, queremos hacerte un recordatorio rápido. Si te está gustando este tipo de videos, nos ayudaría mucho que le dieras al botón de me gusta. Suscríbete si aún no lo has hecho y comentas tu opinión. El 98% de quienes nos ven todavía no están suscritos y juntos podemos hacer crecer esta comunidad. Ahora sí, pasemos con la noticia.
On Sunday morning, but the desperation remains and I guess deepens. And so yesterday morning, CNN presented a so-called interview with CNN that they can't even prove was Donald Trump. They called it breaking news. They called it, quote, an exclusive new interview with President Trump. That's what they called it. Before the interviewer said this.
The president answered my questions on text about his hopes for this nascent deal.
What? You gave him the questions in writing? So now, instead of letting Trump hide in a phone call where we can at least know that it's him talking, Donald Trump gets to hide behind the black screen of texting? We actually have no idea who texted the replies in that so-called interview. CNN is unable to prove that Donald Trump was actually doing that texting. CNN has not revealed how long it took to get a reply to each of the 5 written questions that apparently got replies from someone who texted those replies or someone who told Donald Trump what to text in those replies, or maybe it was from Donald Trump. The first question was, what happens if Hamas insists on staying in power in Gaza, to which the text reply, and we don't know how long this took, was, and we don't know who did it, the text reply says, complete obliteration. The final slow pitch softball question was, how do you think the government shutdown is going to end? That question got the empty answer it deserved. Someone texted this reply as an answer to that question of how the shutdown is going to end. Good, we are winning and cutting costs, big time, exclamation point. The interviewer then said, I asked a few other questions on text, still waiting for a response on those, Mr. President. Okay, what were those questions? Exactly which questions did Donald Trump refuse to answer? What could be more relevant in reporting an exchange that is supposed to be with the President of the United States than including the questions he refused to answer? We have no idea. Any questions about Jeffrey Epstein or his sex trafficking friend, Ghislaine Maxwell? Any questions about Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell? We don't know. We have no idea. We have no idea what the other questions were that Donald Trump refused to answer, or whoever was on the other end of that phone refused to answer. When the history of Donald Trump's mental decline is written, it will no doubt include that so-called interview yesterday as a turning point in Donald Trump's White House dealing with the challenge of Donald Trump trying to answer questions during this period of...
Lo que acabamos de ver es más que una simple anécdota periodística. Es una señal alarmante. Un presidente que no puede sostener una entrevista oral, que necesita enviar respuestas por texto redactadas por su equipo, no está en condiciones de liderar nada. Lo más grave aquí es que ese teatro informativo fue presentado por CNN como una exclusiva. Ni siquiera se tomaron la molestia de verificar si Trump fue quien respondió. Pero eso es apenas el comienzo del caos en el día, porque minutos después, Trump volvió a quedar expuesto, esta vez en público, con cámaras y con micrófonos alrededor.
The criminal conspiracy.
Okay. I'm just giving. Yeah, I was just given a note by the Secretary of State saying that we're very close to a deal in the Middle East, and they're going to need me pretty quickly.
¿Lo notaron? Trump ni siquiera entendía de qué le estaban hablando. Rubio tuvo que explicarle en vivo lo que estaba pasando, y aún así el presidente balbuceó una frase incoherente sobre un acuerdo de paz. Y aquí viene lo peor. Trump ha pasado semanas jactándose de que él terminó todas las guerras, pero cuando surge una negociación real, ni siquiera sabe lo que está ocurriendo. No está negociando, no está decidiendo, no está dirigiendo. Sus asesores manejan la agenda, le escriben los mensajes y le dicen cuándo publicar algo. El presidente de Estados Unidos se ha convertido literalmente en un espectador de su propio gobierno. Y recuerden cuando Trump se burlaba de Biden diciendo que él necesitaba ayuda para firmar documentos. Hoy es él quien necesita permiso para mandar un post a su red social. Este es el mismo hombre que prometió ser el más fuerte frente a Putin, pero cuya propia ex vocera confesó que tras reuniones con el líder ruso, los asesores salían pálidos. No por lo que Putin dijo, sino porque lo que Trump no logró entender.
To possibly suspending habeas corpus to not only deal with these insurrectionists across the nation, but also to continue rapidly deporting illegal aliens.
Yeah, it's suspending who?
Habeas corpus.
Oh. I don't know. I'd rather leave that to Christie. What do you think?
Aquí entra el argumento favorito del bloque MAGA. No, Trump está perfectamente. Es solo que los medios lo atacan. Pero los hechos son claros. Ya no se trata de torpezas ocasionales o lapsus verbales. Se trata de un presidente que no entiende lo que firma ni lo que anuncia. Y cuando el resto del mundo percibe esa debilidad, el peligro ya no es solo interno, es global. El deterioro cognitivo de Donald Trump no es solo un asunto médico. Es un problema político de primer orden. Un presidente desconectado, manipulado por sus asesores y ajeno a las decisiones más delicadas del país. Representa una vulnerabilidad real para Estados Unidos y para el equilibrio internacional. Y lo más preocupante es que mientras la prensa tradicional lo cubre con guantes de seda, su base lo sigue viendo como un genio táctico. Lo que es cierto es que Trump se ha convertido en un títere de su propio entorno, un hombre sostenido por un aparato que necesita mantener la ilusión de control.
El presidente Donald Trump ha construido su mito sobre una estatua estafa. Genio de los negocios, gran negociador. Cada vez que hay que cerrar un acuerdo de verdad, el traje le queda grande y aparece lo que siempre fue, un fraude, delitos y corrupción. Hoy vuelve a chocar contra una negociación que está perdiendo, el cierre del gobierno. Él lo quiere por muchas razones: despedir empleados federales, montar espectáculos y tapar el tema de Epstein, pero le está hundiendo la aprobación. Y eso explica el berrinche y los textos filtrados que vamos a revisar.
Recordatorio rápido: si les gusta este tipo de videos, nos ayudaría muchísimo que le dieran el botón de me gusta, se suscribieran si aún no lo han hecho y comenten su opinión, ya que el 98% de quienes nos ven todavía no están suscritos y juntos podemos hacer crecer a esta comunidad. Ahora sí, pasemos con la noticia.
Un memo filtrado muestra que Trump planea dejar sin pago a 750,000 trabajadores durante el cierre. Un borrador filtrado de un memo de la Casa Blanca sugiere que la administración de Trump está considerado activamente dejar de pagar hasta 750,000 trabajadores federales y negarles la compensación mientras estén con licencia sin sueldo, en medio del cierre de gobierno en curso. Según un reporte de Axios publicado el martes, hasta 750,000 trabajadores federales serían puestos en licencia sin sueldo por caída del cierre, ahora en su séptimo día, de acuerdo con estimaciones de la Oficina de Presupuesto del Congreso. Aunque una ley de 2019 garantiza el pago retroactivo a los empleados federales con licencia sin sueldo, el borrador filtrado de la Casa Blanca, descrito a Axios por 3 fuentes internas, revela que la administración de Trump tiene una interpretación distinta de la ley, que podría permitir negar el pago retroactivo a los trabajadores. Esta ley cubre automáticamente a todos estos empleados con licencia sin sueldo, dijo un alto funcionario de la Casa Blanca a Axios bajo condición de anonimato. La sabiduría convencional dice que sí, nuestra postura es que no. La ley de 2019 se conoce como el Government Employee Fair Treatment Act y fue promulgada durante el cierre del 2018 a 2019, el más largo de la historia de Estados Unidos. En lo que los funcionarios de la Casa Blanca se han fijado es en una disposición de la versión enmendada de la ley que estipula que el pago retroactivo para empleados federales con licencia se proporcionará sujeto a la promulgación de las leyes de apropiación por parte del Congreso que pongan fin a la interrupción, lo que estarían interpretando como que el pago retroactivo debe ser apropiado explícitamente por el Congreso. Si fuera autoejecutable, porque el Congreso hizo eso, dijo el funcionario de la Casa Blanca, refiriéndose a la enmienda del Congreso a la ley. Es precedente y cualquier otra interpretación es ridícula. Sin embargo, críticos dicen que la nueva interpretación de la Casa Blanca es equivocada, incluyendo a un abogado laboral de un despacho con sede en Washington, D.C. No existe autoridad legal que respalde esa interpretación del estatuto. Cuando el lenguaje de un estatuto es claro, los tribunales deben aplicarlo, salvo en raras circunstancias en la que exista una intención legislativa claramente expresada en contrario, o cuando una aplicación literal frustre el propósito del estatuto o conduzca a un resultado absurdo. La ley aquí es bastante clara. La salvedad es si sigues la ley. Aún así, funcionarios de la Casa Blanca insistieron en que la ley seguía siendo ambigua, y otro funcionario descrito por Axios como alto funcionario de la administración se apresuró a culpar a los demócratas porque este asunto siquiera exista. La marca de Trump en una frase es no pagar a la gente que trabaja. Ya lo hizo con contratistas, con proveedores. Ahora lo intenta con empleados federales, amparándose en una lectura torcida de una ley clarísima. ¿Quién cocina estas trampas? El dúo de siempre, operadores como Rose Boat o Stephen Miller, mientras el presidente posa para las cámaras. Ante este cinismo, tiene sentido la bronca que genera la oposición. Escuchen la reacción cuando él intenta ningunear a quien le pone condiciones para negociar.
I look at AOC talking about how if they want to negotiate, they can come to my office. She's not in that position to do that. And who the hell is she to say that?
Hay una razón por la que no se debe ir corriendo a su oficina. Lo que ofrecen es doblar primas, sacar gente del seguro y consolidar recortes para multimillonarios mientras cierran hospitales rurales. Políticamente, además, el público ya etiquetó esto como cierre de Trump. La reacción del presidente: cambiar de tema y fabricar victoria por WhatsApp. Vean cómo responde a la prensa por mensajes de texto.
Hello, I'm Jake Tapper in Washington, where the state of our union is praying for peace. We begin with breaking news, my exclusive new interview with President Trump on the prospect for a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. The president answered my questions on text about his hopes for this nascent deal. I asked him, what happens if Hamas insists on staying in power in Gaza? The president said, complete obliteration, that he was working hard. I also asked the president, how do you think the government shutdown is going to end? He said, good, we are winning and cutting costs. Big time. I asked a few other questions on text, still waiting for a response on those, Mr. President.
Ya esto huele como pánico. Si estuviera cómodo, daría la cara. Una entrevista por SMS permite que responda cualquiera de su staff, con tiempo para pulir consignas y evitar repreguntas. Y aquí entra alguien que no se tragó el formato, Lawrence O'Donnell.
And so yesterday morning, CNN presented a so-called interview with CNN that they can't even prove was Donald Trump. They called it breaking news. They called it, quote, an exclusive new interview with President Trump. That's what they called it. Before the interviewer said this.
The president answered my questions on text about his hopes for this nascent deal.
What? You gave him the questions in writing? So now, instead of letting Trump hide in a phone call where we can at least know that it's him talking, Donald Trump gets to hide behind the black screen of texting? We actually have no idea who texted the replies in that so-called interview. CNN is unable to prove that Donald Trump was actually doing that texting. CNN has not revealed how long it took to get a reply to each of the 5 written questions that apparently got replies from someone who texted those replies or someone who told Donald Trump what to text in those replies, or maybe it was from Donald Trump. The first question was, what happens if Hamas insists on staying in power in Gaza, to which the text reply, and we don't know how long this took, and we don't know who did it, the text reply says, complete obliteration. The final slow pitch softball question was, how do you think the government shutdown is going to end? That question got the empty answer it deserved. Someone texted this reply as an answer to that question of how the shutdown is going to end. Good, we are winning and cutting costs, big time, exclamation point. The interviewer then said, I asked a few other questions on text, still waiting for a response on those, Mr. President. Okay, what were those questions? Exactly which questions did Donald Trump refuse to answer? What could be more relevant in reporting an exchange that is supposed to be with the President of the United States than including the questions he refused to answer? We have no idea. Any questions about Jeffrey Epstein or his sex trafficking friend, Ghislaine Maxwell? Any questions about Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell? We don't know. We have no idea. We have no idea what the other questions were that Donald Trump refused to answer, or whoever was on the other end of that phone refused to answer. When the history of Donald Trump's mental decline is written, it will no doubt include that so-called interview yesterday as a turning point in Donald Trump's White House dealing with the challenge of Donald Trump trying to answer questions during this period of obvious mental decline for Donald Trump. Donald Trump was allowed to become, by CNN, the first president in history to get questions in writing for an interview. Questions that he could take home, as it were, since he was at home. Questions from a reporter. And then Donald Trump was allowed to take, we don't know how much time to reply to those questions. We do know CNN is still waiting for some of them. Something this particular interview would be outraged about if Joe Biden had ever done that, or someone pretending to be Joe Biden had done that. This particular interviewer wrote an entire book condemning Joe Biden because he didn't like the way Joe Biden answered questions. He thought Joe Biden wasn't up to the job of answering questions as a presidential candidate, particularly in the presidential debate. But in fact, every one of the answers that Joe Biden did give in that presidential debate in content was better than every answer given by Donald Trump all of which were insane. But this same interviewer apparently thinks Donald Trump is capable of answering such questions. This same interviewer has never doubted that. If Joe Biden had ever given the answer, quote, complete obliteration, end quote, to what happens next in Gaza or anywhere else in the world, that same interviewer would have pointed to it correctly, I think, as proof of mental incapacity.
El periodismo no es tercerizar respuestas por mensajería, menos con un presidente que evita preguntas hace semanas. La exclusiva textil solo sirvió para que el gobierno plantara 2 frases de guerra y de estamos ganando el cierre, mientras la realidad dice lo contrario. Pierden encuestas, no tienen ley para su truco del sueldo retroactivo y la presión pública se acumula. Nuestro trabajo es no comprar el texto, exigir nombres, tiempos y responsables de cada decisión que golpea a 750,000 familias. El día nos dejó la radiografía de este poder, un memo para no pagar a quien sostiene el Estado, un berrinche contra quien marca límites y una entrevista por texto para maquillar derrota como victoria. Esto no es liderazgo, es miedo con altavoz. La respuesta: 0 cheques en banco, defensa cerrada del salario público garantizado por ley y nada de negociar en chats cara a cara con datos y bajo la luz. Que griten sus eslóganes: nosotros vamos
Donald Trump acaba de sufrir otro golpe público a su ego. El premio Nobel que tanto deseaba se lo dieron a otra persona. Sí, Trump perdió otra vez. Y lo más irónico es que esta derrota tiene que ver directamente con Venezuela. No solo por quien ganó el premio, sino por lo que revela sobre por qué Trump jamás lo obtendría. Como era de esperarse, su reacción fue un auténtico colapso emocional. Y lo mismo ocurrió con su séquito MAGA, que entró en modo víctima otra vez. Un recordatorio rápido. Si les está gustando este tipo de videos, nos ayudaría mucho que le dieran al botón de me gusta. Suscríbanse si aún no lo han hecho y comenten su opinión. El 98% de quienes nos ven todavía no están suscritos y juntos podemos hacer crecer a esta comunidad. Ahora sí, pasemos con la noticia.
In the Senate last night that largely went unnoticed, and I want to tell you about it. Trump's authoritarianism, which is growing in seriousness inside the United States, is now happening overseas as well. A lot of people haven't paid attention to this, but the president has essentially begun a war by taking down boats in the Caribbean with airstrikes that he claims are being operated by drug cartels. He has offered no evidence of who's in these boats. They might be members of drug cartels, but they could be civilians, they could be Americans. But B, and more importantly, the president has no authorization to just decide that he is going to use U.S. military power overseas without congressional authorization, without the consent of the public. Most of these strikes are in the Caribbean. They are off the coast of Venezuela. There's real risk that these strikes could draw the United States into a war with Venezuela, a war that nobody in this country wants. But again, the principle is probably what's most important. This is a president who just doesn't believe that he is subject.
¿Y este es el presidente de la paz? ¿El autoproclamado genio diplomático que merecía el Nobel? Trump ha mostrado una y otra vez no solo el desprecio por la ley, sino un orgullo infantil en violarla. Lo que llamaba autoridad presidencial es en realidad impunidad. Bombardear barcos sin pruebas en aguas extranjeras para alimentar una fantasía de un hombre fuerte. Mientras su política migratoria se derrumba, no es liderazgo, es terrorismo de Estado. Y mientras Trump fabrica guerras de utilería, quienes realmente arriesgan su vida por la democracia, como los venezolanos que enfrentan a un régimen autoritario, son los que hoy reciben el reconocimiento mundial.
We spent a day or two talking about the latest outrage, the latest attempt to destroy our democracy. And then we set that one aside and we talk about and work on the next one. And we don't see the cumulative impact of what it means to have the Department of Justice relentlessly pursuing legally the president's political opponents, what it means to have our media begin to look like state-run and state-owned media, what it looks like to have our troops being deployed all over the country to try to suppress dissent. What's going to happen here is not likely elections being canceled or a coup. What he's trying to do is to just suffocate the space that the opposition has to operate such that there's never enough oxygen for Democrats or any political opposition party to beat him. That's, what happened in Hungary. The political opposition party still exists there. The rules are just rigged so that they can never, ever prosecute their case. They can never win a national election. So when you look at everything he's doing together at the DOJ, at the FCC, at the Department of Defense, it is all designed to try to convince people to just stay quiet, to not show up for the protests, to not run for office, to not vote. That's how our democracy is destroyed. The elections still happen, but the same party wins election after election after election, and that party is Donald Trump's party, his family's party, a party increasingly of oligarchs who are making money off of this government.
Senator, I want to underscore that what you have done today in terms of laying out the connecting the dots, you are really shining a light on the roadmap that Donald Trump is laying out here. And I think that's important because I was just at an event earlier today here in Washington, D.C. I was in Denver this past weekend, and the folks that are, plugged into what we do every single day, they are very concerned. But by and large, many folks, they don't feel like it's necessarily a 5-alarm fire, or they're like, when we get on the other side of this, not understanding that it's going to take work to get on the other side of this. Retribution is not a side note here for the Trump administration. It is the centerpiece. And the Insurrection Act that he's talking about is not just a suggestion. He is openly telling us that he is going to do it. And without any pushback, it is going to happen. And let's just be clear. National Guard troops are on their way to Chicago as we speak. The governor did not ask for them to be there. National Guard troops are attempting to be deployed in Oregon. The governor did not ask for them to be there. National Guard troops were deployed in California. The governor did not ask for them to be there. Have we slipped already into the authoritarianism? Is there a way out? I mean, give us your unvarnished thoughts here.
Well, listen, we are not on the verge of an authoritarian takeover. We're in the middle of it. Now, it's not too late. We haven't lost our democracy. But, we sometimes like to think of the first term Donald Trump, the bumbling White House that didn't seem to have any theory of the case from day to day. This is a very different White House, right? Stephen Miller and his gang, they have a plan. They have a plan that they are executing to transition our country from democracy to something fundamentally different, maybe even autocracy. And that's what I tried to lay out on the floor today, is how this plan is being operationalized every single day. But no, it is not a lost cause. Ultimately, what we know from history is that when a big enough portion of the population, the number's normally around 2%, show up to protests, are regularly engaged in peaceful civic action, enough sand gets thrown in the gears of the attempts to destroy the democracy that you end up saving it. So we have an opportunity in these elections this November to send a signal. We have an opportunity through the protests on October 18th to show the country and the world that we aren't lying down. So this is a serious moment. It's almost lost, but it's definitely not lost yet.
From this president, that any use of force that he condones will be protected.
Yeah, so I certainly am not knowledgeable enough about the interpretation of the Insurrection Act to know the answer to that question. But I think you're pointing out, what is the most important underlying fact here. The president has already made it clear, whether or not he invokes the Insurrection Act, that if you commit violence in his name, you are going to be immunized, you are going to be excused, you're going to be let off the hook. Whereas if you even hint at violence, actually, frankly, if you even just criticize him publicly, that you are going to be met with the full force of the law, illegally, unconstitutionally. And so I think it is really important to anchor ourselves in that reality, that if you commit a violent act and you're doing it to help Donald Trump, you're going to get away with it, which is a signal.
La respuesta del comité fue diplomática, sobria y devastadora para Trump. Básicamente dijeron, no premiamos campañas mediáticas ni egos en busca de validación. Premiaremos a quienes realmente defienden la libertad. Y eso fue suficiente para que la Casa Blanca de Trump se incendiara. Porque apenas se anunció el premio, su equipo entró en crisis. Stephen Chung, su jefe de comunicaciones, publicó furioso que el comité eligió la política por encima de la paz. Y Trump, desde su red social, se autoproclamó merecedor del Nobel. El mismo hombre que ordena bombardeos ilegales, que amenaza a periodistas, que criminaliza la protesta y protege violentos, pretende que el mundo lo reconozca como símbolo de paz. Murphy lo dice con claridad. Ya no estamos ante la amenaza del autoritarismo, estamos viviendo dentro de él. Trump ha convertido las instituciones de Estado en herramientas personales, usa la fuerza militar sin autorización, manipula la justicia y ahora pretende legitimarse con premios internacionales que simbolizan justo lo contrario de lo que él representa. Lo peor es que mientras tanto millones de seguidores siguen creyendo que esto es firmeza, cuando en realidad es una demostración de debilidad y dependencia total del poder. El episodio del Nobel resume a la perfección quién es Donald Trump, un hombre que confunde la violencia con liderazgo, el control con autoridad y la propaganda de reconocimiento. Mientras una mujer arriesga su vida enfrentando una dictadura real, Trump exige aplausos por bombardear barcos y publicar mensajes egocéntricos. Y es precisamente esa diferencia lo que lo atormenta, porque el mundo ve coraje donde él solo ve competencia. Trump no perdió un premio, perdió la oportunidad de demostrar que aún entiende lo que
Si algo quedó claro en el show de Piers Morgan es que a la derecha se le acaba el libreto cuando alguien les planta cara con datos. En el panel estaban Piers, el propagandista MAGA Michael Knowles y por supuesto Jack Quaccherella, que fue quien les apretó sin soltarles la mano, exhibiendo la incapacidad de Donald Trump para sostener respuestas coherentes. Cuando ese punto entró en la mesa, el set se incendió, interrupciones y negación pura. Aquí van algunos momentos claves y por qué importan. Recordatorio rápido, si les gusta este tipo de videos nos ayudaría muchísimo que le dieran el botón de me gusta, se suscribieran si aún no lo han hecho y comenten su opinión, ya que el 98% de quienes nos ven todavía no están suscritos y juntos podemos hacer crecer a esta comunidad. Ahora sí, pasemos con la noticia.
Donald Trump is so dementia-addled right now, he did a text interview with Jake Tapper. Now, I'm not really a fan of Jake Tapper. I think that's a pretty sad move to do a text interview, but do we really think that Donald Trump is on the other side of that phone? No, it's Stephen Miller, it's Russ Vaught.
Actually,
He's
I do. Yeah, I can tell you how I know it.
Playlist.
I can tell you how I know because I text with Trump regularly, and it is him.
I'm sure.
No,
you
just
do.
to be clear, Jack, it is him. It is him.
No,
And
okay.
here's the.
But
And
the
here's
fact
the.
that Donald Trump has to do a
Jack,
text interview, we
Caitlin
can't be
Collins
serious right now. And he's the one attacking.
Jack, calm down. Caitlin Collins from CNN, who's in my old slot at CNN actually, the 9 p.m. hour, gave an interesting interview yesterday, and she was talking about the fact Trump never sleeps. When you're on Air Force One, you can't really sleep properly because he's up all the time wanting to talk to journalists. He gives more airtime to Q&As with the press and the media than any president ever. That's just a fact. Now, you may think he's got dementia, but I would argue the one that looked like he had dementia was the predecessor in the White House who never did Q&As with the press, never did any hostile interviews with anybody because he didn't have the mental acuity to do it. Trump, whatever you think of him, he's out there every day talking for an hour, 2 hours with the media.
There's a big difference, though, between answering a question and responding to a question. And just because Donald Trump's words
between the two? It's the same thing.
Well, if you ask Donald, that's not even remotely true. If you ask Donald Trump whether or not he wants to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell, and he says, "Well, I don't really know who that is, and also, have you seen my ballroom?" That doesn't give you a real answer. He's responding. He can go on and talk about nonsense for an hour, but that doesn't do anything to give you a real answer, to let you know what this administration is doing.
He makes more news.
But it's not about news.
But hang on,
it's not
Jack,
about news. It's about he's the president of the United States. He should answer questions.
He makes more news on a daily basis by answering questions than any other world leader. I mean, he does.
Responding to questions.
Well,
Piers, if you asked me a question and I started ranting about a ballroom that I'm building, and that had nothing to do with the question that you asked me, I think you as a journalist would feel pretty unfulfilled.
Después de ver este clip, aquí Jack hace la jugada correcta. Separa cantidad de calidad. Obliga a Piers a definir qué es responder y qué es rellenar. Además, al subrayar el formato por texto, Jack expone el truco. Sin voz ni tiempo real, cualquiera puede teclear la línea oficial y evitar quedar en evidencia, así como expusimos en anteriores videos. Cuando esa grieta queda abierta, Knowles intenta mover el foco de su zona cómoda, la cual es crimen y mano dura. Veamos cómo Jack le responde.
These states, these Republican states that are being run into the ground, if you're talking about people who need aid and assistance, they're suckling off of California. It has nothing to do with the crime-ridden, failing blue states. It's a non-issue. And this politics
you think
of
there's
subtraction.
No crime in Chicago?
One second, Michael.
You think Chicago's
this politics of subtraction, where you think if you just just take away and take away and take away and will eventually hit a bottom, it just doesn't actually exist as a real theory. If you thought that law enforcement was the answer to this problem, Donald Trump wouldn't be cutting the budget of police across the country to the tune of billions of dollars. Like, that wouldn't be happening. So you don't really have a
increase the law enforcement budget.
First of all, that's not true, which is what just took place in his budget.
He did. That was the big beautiful bill. That was one of the key provisions of the big beautiful bill.
That is absolutely untrue. So you don't even have this like cogent theory of policing or law enforcement that you want to see carried out. It's all about intimidation.
Entonces Jack cambia completamente el marco, de más patrullas a comunidades seguras con escuela extendida, salud mental y programas juveniles. Señala la contradicción, predican ley y orden mientras cancelan fondos que previenen el delito. El resultado, pues Knowles se queda sin plan, solo con eslogans. Al perder el terreno de los datos, pasan al papel de víctimas. Atención a la queja por chistes y formas.
Michael, little snowflakey of you. What day are we on of this AOC story, this non-story? I thought that the right liked comedy. I thought that we could make jokes again. Everyone's in their feelings. We saw Stephen Miller on Fox. He's like rubbing his eye. Verge of tears. She said that I was short and I'm bald too. Stephen Miller. Like,
is that what happened? That's not what I saw happen at all.
Does he have more important things to concern him?
Ya a este punto, Jack los deja en evidencia. El macho alfa de MAGA se derrite ante una ironía. Importa porque su poder descansa en intimidar y silenciar la risa. Con la burla quirúrgica, Jack desactiva el aura de inevitabilidad. Si la idea es absurda, se dice. Si el plan es un timo, se muestra. Basta de pedirles permiso a los matones de MAGA. Este clip de Hakeem Jeffries es exactamente la energía de qué hace falta. Cara a cara, sin rodeos y con números. Fíjense cómo se desarma el teatro del extiendan ya y expone lo que esconden. Extender recortes masivos para millonarios y recordar Medicaid mientras juran que defienden a la clase media. Pongan atención cuando los acorrala preguntando a quién obedecen, al país o a Donald Trump.
Yeah, did you get permission from your boss?
Why don't we sign on right now?
Did your boss Donald
You can
Trump?
easily extend
Did your
the
boss
ACA right now.
Donald Trump
He's
give
not
you
my
permission?
boss.
Yes, he is.
No, he's not. And by the way,
So let me ask you a
why
question.
did you vote to
Let me
shut
ask
the
you a
government
question.
down?
You
Why
know
did
I
you
didn't-
vote to shut
Let
it
me
down?
ask you a question.
For years, you always lectured about how we need to keep the government open.
You're making a show of this to
No,
make
it's
yourself
sad.
relevant.
It's sad. You could
It's
easily
an
sign on to
You're
this.
embarrassing
You
yourself
could
right
sign
now.
on to this. The only
You're
embarrassment
chasing
here is
clout.
you.
You're an
You
embarrassment.
could sign on to the bill.
Let me ask you a question.
You have 4 Democrats on here.
Let me ask you a
Why won't you
question.
sign on
Let me ask
to
you a
it?
question.
It's a
Let
clean
me ask
extension
you a
for 1
question.
year.
You voted for the one big
Clean
ugly bill,
extension.
correct?
I voted for a
The
tax cut
largest-
bill that gave
the
the largest
largest
tax
cut-
cut
the
to
largest-
Americans in history,
the
including, by
largest-
the way, the average New Yorker getting a $4,000 tax cut. Are you against that?
You're embarrassing
Do you wanna,
yourself right
you want
now.
to cut the standard deduction in
The
half? Is that
largest
what you
cut
wanna
to
do?
Medicaid in
No, we
American
voted
history.
out
You
waste,
voted for that.
fraud, and abuse, by the
You
way.
voted
Tom DiNapoli, the
for a
Democratic
permanent-
controller of New York,
Let me ask you a question.
pointed out that $1.2
If
billion
you're gonna,
were wasted.
listen, you're not gonna
wasted,
talk. You're not gonna talk to me.
wasted
You're not
on
gonna talk to me
fraud
and talk
and
over
non-New
me
York residents
because you don't
getting
want to
paid.
hear what I have to say.
Oh, I'm
So
listening.
why don't
Go
you
ahead.
just keep your mouth shut?
Oh,
Because you
is
showed
that-
up.
is that the way to
You
talk?
showed up. You showed up.
Yeah.
And so you voted for this one
I
big
signed
ugly
on to
bill.
this. You can extend it
A
right now.
permanent extension of massive tax breaks for your billionaire
So
donors.
90% of
Acá tenemos 3 golpes limpios de Jeffrey. ¿Quién manda? Cuando pregunta si tu jefe, Donald Trump, te dio permiso, no es chisme, es evidenciar que la bancada republicana no negocia, sino que obedece. Sin autonomía no hay acuerdo, hay órdenes. 2. ¿Qué esconden? La extensión que venden como técnica es en realidad hacer permanente un paquete de exenciones para donantes y el hachazo a Medicaid. Por eso nadie responde con cifras, cambian el tema, suben la voz y se victimizan. Y tercero, ¿cómo se gana? Jeffries no discute en su cancha, los arrastra a la factura. ¿Cuánto le suben a tu prima el seguro? ¿Cuánto pierde tu hospital? ¿Cuánto se llevan los de arriba? Cuando el marco es bolsillo, salud y servicios, el libreto MAGA se deshace. Ya terminando, no hay buenas formas que valgan cuando el otro lado solo hay chantaje. La fórmula es simple: nombrar al tiritiretero, que en este caso es Donald Trump, revelar la letra pequeña como los recortes y privilegios permanentes y devolver la discusión al terreno que importa: salarios, salud y seguridad real. Si suben el tono, subimos los datos, y si hay líderes que encaren como Jeffries, la farsa se cae.
Donald Trump volvió a hacerlo. Logró convertir un simple chequeo médico en una crisis política y económica a escala nacional. Exacto, el actual presidente de Estados Unidos fue visto nuevamente en el hospital, y aunque su equipo intenta minimizar, la prensa, incluso CNN, ya no puede seguir fingiendo que todo está bien. Trump no solo mostró claras señales de deterioro físico, sino que además, al salir del hospital, publicó un mensaje tan delirante que hundió los mercados en cuestión de horas. Lo que estamos viendo ya no es un escándalo más, es la evidencia de que el hombre que controla la Casa Blanca no está en control ni de sí mismo. Mira esto a continuación.
19, where he had that surprise visit to Walter Reed. It was not announced. I think it was even on a weekend where all of a sudden he went to Walter Reed, and then again in June. So if you look at the cadence of that, there have been times when it's more than annual. So in that sense, not that surprising. But again, you know, I worked at the White House. I seen that White House medical facility. It's pretty good. If you're going to Walter Reed, it's usually for more extensive testing.
So this obviously comes in the context of those photographs that we've seen of his bruised hands, swollen ankles. We've talked about this before, but how concerning are those images?
Yeah. Well, you know, the way that I would sort of look at it is that I think they're concerning, which is why questions have been asked, investigations have been performed, and the White House medical team has commented on it. So if you look at the hands, for example, first of all, they say that, look, he's on blood thinners, he shakes a lot of hands. If you look closely at that, it's more bruising on the right than the left, the shaking hand, you know, the hand that you shake hands with. So that kind of fits. A lifetime of sun damage. The skin on the back of the hand is quite thin, so it's a little bit more susceptible to bruising like this. So my point being that it fits. The explanation sort of fits, it tracks. With regard to the ankles, the swollen ankles, I think were pretty clear. And again, that can be of concern, but you know, the blood is not flowing through there as well. It's pooling or accumulating in the ankles, and they say that is something known as chronic venous insufficiency. The veins just aren't pumping the blood as well back to the rest of the body. They're not moving the blood as well. Again, that tracks. About 1 in 20 people have this, and it gets more common as you get older. So yeah, to just look at it, concerning, investigate, and those explanations do make sense, Jake.
What do we know about President Trump's health? Because in January, he became the oldest president ever inaugurated in the history of this country. He's now 79.
Yeah. Yeah, and to give context, the lifespan for a man in this country is just under 76 years old. So, you know, I mean, both these last two presidents have been far older than average life expectancy. What we're likely to hear is what we heard back in April. We're going to hear his height and his weight, 224 pounds. His blood pressure was normal. They've talked a lot about this dementia screening test known as the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. I think he's taken it a few times now, and his doctors and him say that he's gotten a perfect score. The skin I just mentioned. He is on medications, including a couple of different cholesterol-lowering medications. His cholesterol numbers back in April, they look good. And certainly those medications are helping with that. And he's on aspirin, this blood thinner.
Lo más llamativo no es que The CNN hable de los problemas de salud de Trump, lo cual ya es bastante inusual, sino que por fin se atreven a reconocer lo evidente. El presidente muestra signos de agotamiento y descontrol. Jake Tapper, que normalmente prefiere hablar de cualquier otra cosa antes de tocar a Trump, esta vez no pudo evitarlo. Y es que ni siquiera el maquillaje de la Casa Blanca puede ocultar lo obvio. Las imágenes de Trump evitando hablar con los periodistas y caminando con dificultad, visiblemente molesto, dicen más que cualquier comunicado oficial. La pregunta no es si está enfermo, la pregunta es quién está gobernando mientras él pierde el control. Lo que acabamos de leer no es un comunicado presidencial, es el desvarío de alguien convencido de que gobierna desde un teléfono. Trump mezcla cifras inventadas, amenazas comerciales e imposibles, y con una fecha absurda. Noviembre de 2025, como si todo el mundo esperara sus órdenes. El resultado obtenido es caos financiero, un gobierno paralizado y un presidente que parece cada vez más desconectado de la realidad. Y mientras tanto, los asesores callan, los funcionarios obedecen y los aliados de MAGA fingen que todo está bajo control. Pero el colmo vino después. Lawrence O'Donnell, sí, el analista del MSNBC, hizo algo que pocos se atreven a decir en voz alta.
Well, the possibility of a relentlessly stupid person becoming president of the United States has been underexplored by screenwriters. And then Donald Trump came along and went far beyond what Hollywood could ever imagine in the presidency. Prior to Donald Trump, the challenge for screenwriters and fiction writers would have been, first of all, how could a profoundly stupid person be elected president of the United States? And then, how could a profoundly stupid person get through a day on the job as president? The fictional president, played brilliantly by Martin Sheen on NBC's Emmy-winning series The West Wing, was a wise and carefully thoughtful president for whom I wrote several episode scripts over 7 years of that series. And if I were writing the character of a stupid president in a script, I would simply have had the stupid president completely rely on a smart White House staff and a smart cabinet and just hide behind those people. And absolutely, and I mean absolutely, never talk to the press, because a stupid president's stupidity would be immediately exposed by the White House press corps. And on that point, I would have been very wrong, because it turns out the stupidest presidency in American history has the stupidest White House press corps in American history, as far as we can tell. And the press corps have become accessories, as they proved again today. No one could have imagined that if we get the stupidest president in history, we would also get the stupidest White House press corps collectively. The public knows much better than the White House press corps that Donald Trump is lying about who pays the tariffs. On this, the American public, much, much smarter than your average White House reporter. A new poll shows 81% of Americans are very concerned or somewhat concerned about the impact of tariffs on their personal finances. And I have absolutely no doubt that 81% of the White House press corps do not know how tariffs work. And not one of those 81% of the public who do know, who are completely correct in their concern, have had any Trump at all, any help at all in comprehending the Trump tariffs from the White House press corps. What would happen? What would happen if Donald Trump turned on a White House press reporter and said, "Why don't you tell me about tariffs?"
Duro, pero cierto. O'Donnell dice lo que muchos medios temen admitir. No solo tenemos al presidente más complicado de la historia moderna, sino también a una prensa que le ha permitido llegar tan lejos sin rendir cuentas. La economía se tambalea, los mercados se desploman y la Casa Blanca sigue actuando como si todo fuera un simple malentendido. Sin embargo, Trump sigue convencido de que pasar un test cognitivo equivale a tener un alto coeficiente intelectual. Sí, ese mismo test donde solo hay que reconocer un elefante en una imagen. El presidente, que presume ser muy estable mentalmente, necesita pruebas médicas para demostrar que aún puede distinguir a un animal de otro. Eso es mucho más preocupante. Este episodio resume la era Trump en una sola escena. Un presidente que confunde su delirio de liderazgo, que destruye la economía mientras se cree un genio financiero y que necesita imágenes cognitivas para convencerse de que todavía está al mando. No hay enemigo externo que pueda dañar más a Estados Unidos que el propio hombre que dice defenderlo. Y mientras él sigue publicando disparates, el país entero paga el precio de su ego. Esto es Rumor de Estado. Donald Trump lo hizo de nuevo. Lo que para cualquier otro presidente sería una visita rutinaria al hospital, para Trump se transformó en un espectáculo de opacidad, desconfianza y mentiras. Y esta vez, su propio equipo terminó filtrando algo que el gobierno intentó ocultar a toda costa. Un detalle médico que desmonta toda la hipocresía antivacunas y conspirativa que su administración lleva meses impulsando. Un recordatorio rápido: si les está gustando este tipo de videos, nos ayudaría mucho que le dieran al botón de me gusta, suscríbanse si aún no lo han hecho y comenten su opinión. El 98% de quienes nos ven todavía no están suscritos y juntos podemos hacer crecer esta comunidad. Ahora sí, pasemos con la noticia.
Donald Trump is the oldest man to ever be sworn in as president of the United States. Yes, he is older than Joe Biden was when he assumed office. And one thing we know about the presidency is that it ages people, right? I mean, you can see in the comparisons of presidents when they took office versus when they left office. And it's more than just the passage of time. They're dealing with the stress of running the most powerful country on earth. That struggle was on full display with the last president, Joe Biden, who was at the time the oldest person ever elected. And Biden was ultimately forced to drop out of his reelection bid as a result. And then the country just turned around and elected a man who, again, broke the record for the oldest person to become president. And 9 months in, I gotta say, the guy doesn't look great. He's got a reoccurring bruise on his hand. He's constantly trying to cover up with makeup. He's got severely swollen ankles, which the White House attributes to a very common condition among senior citizens. But it's more than that. Mentally, the guy seems off. He's constantly drifting off during meetings, unable to properly understand questions from reporters, rambling even more than he did during his first term. And that problem is compounded by the fact the administration is among the least transparent we've ever seen. Just take a look at this official White House announcement about the president's schedule just today. Quote, on Friday morning, President Trump will visit Walter Reed Medical Center for a planned meeting and remarks with the troops. While there, President Trump will stop by for his routine yearly checkup. He will then return to the White House. President Trump is considering going to the Middle East shortly thereafter. Wait, what was that part sandwiched in the middle there? Oh, the president's going to talk to the troops at Walter Reed and, hey, while you're there, might as well pop in for the yearly checkup. But here's the thing, Donald Trump already had his annual checkup. It was in April. Here's the official White House readout from that visit, the one where they said he's 6'2" and 224 pounds, which is, by the way, the same height and weight as Patrick Mahomes. But if you're concerned about the president needing 2 physicals in 1 year, have no fear. Trump says he's doing just fine.
I think I'm in great shape, but I'll let you know. But I have no difficulty thus far. Is there wood around here? I'll knock on. No difficulty. Physically, I feel very good. Mentally, I feel very good. You know, I did about 6-7 months ago. I do physicals. I like to, when I'm around, I like to check. I also did a cognitive exam, which is always very risky because if I didn't do well, you'd be the first to be blaring it. And I had a perfect score. And one of the doctors said he's almost never seen a perfect score. I had a perfect score. I got the highest score. And that made me feel good.
Trump didn't let us know, though. He didn't take questions as he shuffled in or out of Walter Reed today. I do kind of wonder why. Maybe he didn't.
Entonces, el presidente más viejo en la historia del país decide ir de nuevo al hospital, sin motivo aparente, sin aviso y con un secretismo que huele a crisis interna. Pero el misterio duró poco. La vocera de la Casa Blanca, Caroline Leavitt, terminó revelando el secreto mejor guardado del día. En medio de la supuesta revisión rutinaria, Donald Trump recibió varias vacunas, incluyendo, sí, una dosis de refuerzo contra el coronavirus. El mismo Trump, que permitió que su movimiento MAGA se llene de teorías antivacunas, alentó a los seguidores y a los conspiranoicos que gritan libertad médica. Se vacunó tranquilamente en privado. Mientras sus bases siguen convencidas de que el virus es un invento, Trump se protege con los mismos avances científicos que él y su séquito atacan públicamente. Y lo peor no es la hipocresía, es el desprecio, porque mientras la élite política asegura su dosis y atención médica, millones de estadounidenses como la gente común no pueden ni siquiera pagar un antibiótico. Esa es la verdadera definición de América va primero. Ellos siempre van primero.
There is a very large peaceful protest that is planned for October 18th. By the way, I don't think the Democrats have any relationship to whether they're holding the government hostage over it. It's completely one has nothing to do with the other. That protest is not going to just be in Washington, but it's going to be in thousands of communities across the country. Now, I'm going to tell you something. It's not called a Hate America protest. They couldn't actually say the name of the protest because it would be so obviously American in its name. It is the No Kings protest. No Kings being a value, I think, that unites all of us as Americans. Republicans are trying to paint this as some kind of reverse January 6th plot by leftist terrorists. But it's a lie. It's a despicable lie, honestly, and a dangerous one, because there was already a No Kings protest earlier this year. Remember? We both lived through it. It's not that long ago. You might have even been there if you're listening to this right now. I covered it live at this desk, along with the other estimated 5 million Americans who were there, of every background and age, and they marched, and they danced, and they sang, and they carried signs, some of them snarky, some of them quite funny, all across the country, in more than 2,000 cities and towns. It was held on June 14th, Flag Day. It even outdrew Donald Trump's birthday parade of army tanks that same day. Remember that? So, when all those MAGA Republicans went out in advance of the protest to try to criminalize protected political activity, the organizers of the upcoming No Kings rally responded, quote, after a few moments of laughter, the No Kings coalition issued the following statement. Speaker Johnson is running out of excuses for keeping the government shut down. Instead of reopening the government, preserving affordable health care, or lowering costs for working families, he's attacking millions of Americans who are peacefully coming together to say that America belongs to its people, not to kings.
Ese es el punto. Mientras Trump se comporta como un monarca enfermo que exige la lealtad ciega, la ciudadanía prepara una movilización para recordarle algo básico. Estados Unidos no tiene reyes. El contraste podría ser más simbólico. De un lado, un presidente envejecido, mentiroso y paranoico, que se vacuna a escondidas mientras le miente a sus seguidores, y del otro, millones de personas dispuestas a defender la idea de que el poder pertenece al pueblo, no a un dictador en potencia. Y en medio de todo esto, el movimiento MAGA sigue haciendo malabares morales para justificar lo injustificable. Un líder que predica una cosa, hace otra y se burla del país entero mientras lo hace. Lo más grave no es que Trump esté enfermo físicamente, es que su presidencia está enferma moralmente. Este episodio no se trata solo de un chequeo médico, se trata de una radiografía completa de un gobierno basado en la mentira. Un presidente que oculta su salud, manipula información y actúa como si la Casa Blanca fuera de su propiedad privada. Y mientras tanto, la oposición republicana se dedica a inventar enemigos y a atacar ciudadanos comunes que solo exigen transparencia. Esa es la verdadera enfermedad del sistema, el culto a la impunidad. Trump no es un líder fuerte. Es un hombre debilitado que necesita que millones finjan que todavía lo es. Si este análisis te resultó útil, no olvides suscribirte, dejar tu like y compartir este video. Esto es Rumor de Estado.